As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after thee. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship thee. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after thee. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship thee. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone does my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship thee. You're my friend, and you are my brother, even though you are a king. I love you more than any other, so much more than anything. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone does my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship thee. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone does my spirit worship you, Lord. Say we exalt thee. Oh, Lord. Oh, we worship you, Lord. Oh, we exalt you, Lord. Oh, Lord. Oh, you're so wonderful, God. You're so magnificent, oh Lord. Oh, Lord. Oh, we honor you, God. Oh, we love you, Lord. Oh,
The Reverend Dr. Martha Simmons resides in Atlanta, Georgia. She is a native of Chula, Mississippi, and an associate minister at Rush Memorial United Church of Christ in Atlanta, Georgia. She is the surrogate mother to Steve McDonald and James Gray, two boys she took into her home when they were in high school. Reverend Simmons stands among the veterans in ministry. For more than 30 years, she has preached throughout America and in Africa and served in a variety of ministerial capacities. Reverend Simmons has codified and or published more African American sermons and materials on preaching than any person in history. For the past 28 years, her primary ministry has been the codification, preservation, and elevation of African American preaching for present and future generations, and aiding women of color in ministry. Through her work in homiletics, she provides theories and approaches that promote excellence in preaching and ministry. Through her work with women of color in ministry, she seeks to offer them advocacy, mentorship, educational support, and employment. Reverend Simmons has also developed a reputation for being a mentor to young clergy, having aided more than 37 clergy in becoming senior pastors. She is a life coach to many older pastors. Dr. Simmons' ministry projects include serving as a senior script reviewer and program participant for the February 2021 Black Church PBS special hosted by Henry Louis Gates. Preaching and Preachers, a weekly Facebook Live broadcast. Creator of the Women of Color in Ministry Project. Adjunct homiletics professor at Mercer University. Creator and director of the African American online Lectionary. And for 13 years, Dr. Simmons has served as the president and executive editor of the African American Pulpit Journal. Dr. Simmons received the Bachelor of Science degree from Bradley University, the Master of Divinity from Emory University, the Juris Doctor degree from the New College of California School of Law, and she is currently pursuing her ThD at Boston University. Dr. Simmons' publications include 500 illustrations for sermons and other occasions coming in the spring of 2022. The Christian Minister's Manual for the Pulpit and Public Square for all denominations. Doing the Deed, the Mechanics of 21st Century Preaching. And she is one of 2 general editors of Preaching with Sacred Fire, African American Sermons from 1750 to the present. Nehemiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 7 and 15 through 16. When the word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message: "Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono." But they were scheming to harm me, so I sent messengers to them with this reply: "I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you?" 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter, in which was written, "It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let us meet together." Verses 15 and 16. So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence, because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God.
Good evening, Elmwood United Presbyterian Church, to all members, officers, friends, and everyone who has joined online. You honor me by allowing me to offer a message during your revival. Special thanks to the senior pastor, Reverend Maria Crompton, for this wonderful invitation. Let's go right to the message. This evening, I want to use for a subject, wall theology for Thanksgiving. Wall theology for Thanksgiving. The entire pericope, which I hope you will read, is verses 1 through 16, but we will focus on verses 1 through 7 and verses 15 and 16. A DEA agent showed up at a farm. He said to the farmer, "I am from the Drug Enforcement Agency, and this badge and this letter give me the authority to search anywhere on this property." The farmer said, "Well, okay, but if I was you, I wouldn't go to the back of the barn." The DEA agent said, "This badge and this letter give me the authority to go anywhere I want to on this property." The farmer said, "Okay." The DEA agent went to the back of the barn. Next thing you know, the farmer heard a loud yell, and just then the DEA agent flew past him, running and screaming, "There's a bull loose back there. There's a bull loose." The farmer said, "Show him your badge and your letter." Some people believe that their positions authorize them to act as if they hold a badge inscribed with the words, "I am God and I am in charge." They could care less about the provisions, the providence, or the presence of God. They underpay who they want to. They exclude from schools who they want to. They deport who they want to. They redline from housing who they want to. They deny business loans to who they want to. They criminalize who they want to. They starve who they want to. They profile who they want to, and they kill who they want to. These individuals practice the worst form of what I call wrecking theology, because they believe they are cosmically in control of the universe. They spend most of their waking moments tearing down institutions and people. They are wreckers who leave nothing in their wake but wreckage. But there's a major difference between wreckage and wall theology. Let me talk about it. We are familiar with walls. There are 4 approaches to walls. You can build a wall, tear down a wall, guard a wall, or breach, meaning go over a wall. Walls either harm or protect. Now, what do I mean by theology? The word theology comes from 2 words, theos, which is the Greek word for God, and logos, which is Greek for words. So theology means speaking words about God. And when we speak about God, of course, we are also speaking about God's creation, all people and the planet. Theology is a lifelong process, not something you define one day and just go live out the next. Why? Because it concerns God and humanity and the planet. My God, how long will it take you to learn everything you can just about God and humanity? And how can we get to know God better? Talking about theology, we can do it through many ways. I recommend reading God's word, praying, and connecting to God's people. At the end of the day, your theology is what you believe about God, which you show by how you treat people. That's right. Show me how you treat people, and I will tell you what you must believe about God, which is your theology. If you're always tearing people down, then you believe God is an out of control demagogue. If you see women as objects and not subjects, then your God is a misogynist. If you're only concerned about the needs of folk who look like you, then your God is a nationalist. If you spend more on defense than feeding the poor, your God is a warmonger. If your main concern is people's bedroom sins, then your God is a peeping Tom. Viewing God in these ways, this type of sociology and anthropology creates wreckage theology. Now, since I'm talking about wall theology for Thanksgiving, what is meant by wall theology? I am glad you asked. Wall theology emanates from the Spirit of God, and it teaches you when to build a wall and when to tear down a wall. Let me go to the text so we can learn more about wall theology, so that we can offer ways to give thanks to God as we practice wall theology for Thanksgiving. In the 6th chapter of the book of Nehemiah, we find that Nehemiah was a cupbearer for King Artaxerxes. Cupbearers tasted the king's wine first to make certain that it was flavorful and had not been poisoned. So cupbearers were close to kings. Some were even their administrators, because if you trust a man to drink possibly poison wine to keep you alive, you know you can trust it. So Nehemiah is living large. He lived in a palace at Susa. The palace was made of gold and cedar, silver and ivory. It was so opulent that even the bricks the palace had were extravagant gold inlaid with designs on them. However, Nehemiah was not a Samaritan like the king. He was a Jew. And one day he heard from his brother that the Jewish people were in peril and they were divided. So instead of just spending his life chasing the the Susa dream, a pension and the ability to retire comfortably, Nehemiah had a heart for his people. He cried for the condition of his people. He mourned and fasted, and he went to God about his people. He could not shake the conversation he had with one of his brothers. He was heartbroken and distraught. He knew that he had to rebuild the city wall and he had to work to reunite his people. That is what the entire book of Nehemiah is about, reuniting the people. Wall theology issues a clarion call for the solidarity of communities. Elmwood United, in this season of Thanksgiving, you are here to answer the call. As people wrestling with the demonic and immoral systems of this country, we need dedicated, unencumbered sanctuaries for strategic development, economic advancement, and havens for the hopeless. Wall theologies make sacred our movements of justice. These church walls are not here to divide us, but they are walls to develop our highest ideals, our sense of generosity and community solidarity. Oppressed people need sanctuaries, revolutionary spaces untouched by the forces of patriarchy and unending greed. Good wall theology reminds us that God pines for pockets of the world to be anti-racist, anti-sexist, and anti-heterosexist. Nehemiah wanted to build a wall, yes, but the goal of building the wall was for the protection and unification of his people. That was his burden. His people, like our people, were not united. We need churches and leaders, Reverend Crumpton, who will unite our people. We have kids fighting in the hood over territories. Our denominations are fighting in boardrooms over budgets and doctrines that don't feed anyone's souls. Black evangelicals are fighting over whether God mainly resides in people's bedrooms, not in boardrooms and courtrooms. And the middle class and poor folks are fighting over a crust of bread and need the church to show them how to overthrow systems to get an entire loaf. These differences, our differences, cause us to overly emphasize where we disagree at the expense of where we agree. Wall theology makes space for opposing ideas and personalities and holds them in creative tension. This creative tension harvests the best of all of our traditions. So Nehemiah was sad and disturbed that his people were not united. He wept and lamented, and God took him from lament to leadership. When you get through crying about your people, Elmwood United, are you prepared to get up and go to work? This is a thanks and giving revival. As we give thanks, let us not fail to give of ourselves and our best service to those who need us. Yes, people need food and turkey during this season, but they need us 365 days a year. Do you have a specific burden that God has placed in your soul in this season? This community is waiting on a gift that only you can offer. Nehemiah didn't throw up an emotional wall and say, Lord, I feel for them, but that's too much for me to do. I'll just pray. Nehemiah had a burden. He was close to the king. So when he went to the king and asked for time to go rebuild the wall in his community, the king gave him time off. By the time we enter chapter 6, Nehemiah has been working on the wall for a while, along with hundreds of others from the community. He has been working night and day, barely sleeping and eating for weeks, and his enemies get the word that the work is just about finished. Can I tell you something? Elmwood United, the perfect time for your enemies to show up is not at the beginning of your work, not when your work is finished, but the perfect time for your enemies to show up is when you are on the brink of walking into something great. Pastor Crumpton, the best time for your enemies to show up is when you're almost about to save a grammar school that the city has allowed to rot. It's when you're almost about to close a deal to build housing for the homeless. It's when you're almost about to get money to start a ministry to help women coming out of prison. That's when folks practicing wreckage theology show up. They show up attempting to tear down everything you've worked on. Somebody got word to Nehemiah's enemies, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, that the wall was almost finished. These men were out to stop the reunification of Nehemiah's community, so they sent him a message. Come, let us meet together. But the text also says that they intended to do him harm. Pastor, folk will bring you a message from someone else, but the question is always who sent it. If you want to practice wall theology for Thanksgiving church, you have to have spiritual discernment. You have to be able to tell when there is harm intended. Discernment is critical because people with wrecking theology are always lurking while you are working. You have to be able to discern who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. You have to be able to discern who is wearing the title Christian when the lights are on and raising hell when the lights are off, as if God can't see in the dark. So Nehemiah's enemies show up when the wall is almost finished. Elmwood United Presbyterian Church and everyone listening online, if you want to practice wall theology, whenever the enemy shows up, your answer must always be the same. When the church is expanding, and even when there is slow growth and no growth, when your enemies show up to stop your work, your answer must always be the same. I can't come down. I can't come down. Too many folks still don't have a decent place to live. I can't come down. Too many folks can't survive on minimum wage. I can't. Too many women are still dying because of domestic violence. I can't. 4.9 million seniors are living in poverty. I can't. Too many folks still rest their heads on concrete every night. I can't. Too many corporations are gouging the poor. I can't come down. Because of the NRA, you need a bulletproof vest just to walk down the street. I can't. I can't. I-CAN''T can't come down. But Pastor, folk with wrecking theology are persistent. So even when you say you can't come down, just like this church is intent on staying on the wall, those with wrecking theology are intent on bringing you down. The text says Sanballat and Geshem both sent a messenger to Nehemiah. These messengers roll up. Mr. Nehemiah, we have a message for you. And it's from Governor Sanballat and Governor Geshem. They want to meet with you. Then Nehemiah sends messengers to the two governors. He tells them both, I am not coming down, but they were persistent. They sent messengers a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. Each time, Nehemiah's response was the same. But those who practice wrecking theology are persistent. Sanballat, who was the ringleader, sent a messenger a fifth time. But this time, the letter had a thread in it. It read something like this. Nehemiah, everyone everywhere, and Governor Geshem too, is saying that you and the Jews are hatching a rebellion. That's why you are building a wall. And according to what I hear, your plan is to become king. There's already a king in Judah, and I'm going to report to the king that a rebellion is being planned. So although you have put me off 4 times, if you know what's good for you, you will meet with me so that we can talk. Nehemiah sent a letter back, and in my sanctified imagination, it read something like this: Sanballat, bruh, I know you. Ain't nobody saying none of that. You just making stuff up. That's your nature, and Geshem's too. As Drake said, a goal is just a dream with a deadline. Sanballat, I got a deadline. I'm out. Nehemiah knew Sanballat was lying because people who practice wrecking theology are always lying. It's a pastime to them. But again, wreckers are persistent. Nehemiah stopped work briefly to visit Shemaiah, who pretended he was homebound. He too lied to get Nehemiah to stop working. And he was from Nehemiah's community. There are two-faced double agents in our community who will, for a few pennies and fake power, don a G-string and prostitute themselves. But the discerning Nehemiah was ready for him too. He said, but sir, should a man like me run away? Shemaiah had suggested that he run away. Nehemiah said, would a man like me run away? I am a wall builder. Church, do you know what is one of the biggest problems that the Christian church has? Church folk can pray. That's not the problem. They know how to give God praise. That's not the problem. They believe in love and peace. And that's not the problem. The problem is too many don't have any courage. Elmwood United Presbyterian Church and everyone listening online, I thank God for you and your work in this city. Since 1961, you have practiced wall theology, and you have torn down walls of division, gender, and class. So Nehemiah discerned that they were all in cahoots. Then Nehemiah just said, Lord, from Sanballat to the rest, remember them all. Pastor Maria, no matter how many folk the devil sends to intimidate you, to try to make you sin so that they can mess up your name, so they can talk about you all over Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, don't fall for it. Just tell God, remember them. Elmwood, when someone tries to come through to stop the work of God, do like Nehemiah did. He said, Lord, from Sanballat to all of the rest of our enemies, remember them. If they are trying to stop the work of God, you have a right to say that. No, God is not a guard dog that bites on our command. However, God is a keeper. God is a shield. God will fight for you. So summon your keeper, your shield, your defender, your very present help in the time of trouble, your battle axe, your leaning post, your noonday rider, your midnight burden bearer, your guard at every gate, and your wall against every enemy. There's a time for you to fight, and there's a time for you to stand still and let God fight for you. There's a time for you to fight, Elmwood, and a time when the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. Pastor, the wall was finished. And Nehemiah said, when all of our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid. They perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of God. They said our God had done it. Nehemiah knew, and I want to leave you with this, Elmwood, during this revival, and to everyone listening online. Always have a heart for the unity of the people. Be discerning. Never come down from the wall and the work of God. And finally, remember to always give God thanks, because all that you have achieved, God did it. Yes, you worked, but God gave you health and strength. Yes, you had pastors with vision, but God sent the pastors. God did it. So Elmwood, keep liberating, keep feeding, keep teaching, keep preaching, keep on loving, keep on caring. And for every victory, let it be known that God did it. God has given this church 60 years of favor. God did it. Through every up and every down, God stayed with you. God did that. God sent this church members that followed leadership. God did that. God built a wall of protection around you so your enemies did not destroy you. God did that. Hallelujah. For 60 years, God did it. Let me let you go when I tell you this. A Black man entered the military during World War I. As part of his training, he was told that he had to climb an 8-foot wall. Unbeknownst to him, to make him quit, they had greased the wall. As his training had taught him, he ran toward the wall to get a foothold and attempted to grab the rope to go over the wall. He couldn't get a grip, and he fell in the mud that was beneath him. Like any good soldier, he got up, ran faster, straight to the wall. But again, he fell into the mud beneath him. Another Black soldier realized what had been done to the wall, and he raced to help his brother up, and he whispered in his ear, "Grease." The commander barked, "You can't help him up in war, so get back in line." The soldier, who had fallen twice, then looked down at the mud beneath him and began throwing mud all over the wall. The commander shouted, "What are you doing?" The soldier said, "Sir, I'm just creating a condition." He took off running. The mud stuck to the wall and to his feet, and with that rope over the wall he went. Years later, when he recounted that story, someone asked, "How did you know that the mud would work?" He said, "I didn't. That's why I looked up before I looked down. I knew God could create a miracle even out of mud, and God did." That's the closing word on this night of revival. And I'm excited just thinking about what God's going to do next. When they ask you, how did a Presbyterian church like this manage to survive? Without a doubt in your mind, you can say to anyone and everyone, God did it. God moved every enemy. God sent the money. God sent the people. God sent us what we needed. God sent the members. God sent the pastors. God did it. God did it. God did it. And God is not done. God is not done. God is not done. And I can't wait to see what God is going to do through all of us next. God bless you. Amen.